everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mused by Mariah, the podcast. I am so excited for this episode because I feel like I've had a creative mindset since I was young in like a marketing digital type way. I can't draw to save my life. I can probably do some abstract art and just throw, some shit on a canvas and call it a day. But I have a very special guest. Her name is Jeanne, and we are going to get into how we can heal through the creative. So, Jeanne, thank you so much for joining.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to hang with you for a little while.
Thanks. So before we get into the content and the meat of this episode, if you want to just give the listeners a little background on yourself, what you do, how you came into this line of work. And I know your title, one of your titles, you consider yourself a transmutational healer. If you
Woo!
can explain
Who told you
what,
that? Yes, that's awesome.
if you can explain what that means for the listeners, that would be great.
Yeah, well, transmutational or transformational, they're very similar words. I the way I like to explain it to people is when you imagine a snake that sheds its skin continuously and moves into a new life of itself. And so when I talk about that, and I talk a lot about something else called alchemized freedom and activated art and all of those things, basically what I'm talking about are the principles that allow us to move through what we are not into what we truly are. And to do that, we have to unveil, we have to unpack, we have to peel. And so as we do that, we are transmuting ourselves into the gold. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
definitely
okay,
does.
good. Okay, good.
And then you're also an artist.
I am predominantly an artist. Yeah, I was born with a crayon in my hand. So being an artist is my medicine of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I were to put it that way, because of the healing aspects and the shamanic studies and all of the different modalities that I've gone through, and being born psychically and
Mm-hmm.
intuitive, art just lends. I mean, it's a beautiful tool because
Mm-hmm.
we're channeling it.
Yeah. And it's
I can't
another
I can't
outlet.
make that up.
Mm-hmm.
So
How did you realize when obviously you started as an artist, like you said, but how did you kind of combine these two worlds between the art world and then the spiritual, crafty world into one?
well, they both sit in my bones. I literally can't help it. There's no other way for me to be. And people call me quirky and all the things, and they're like, "Oh my God, and how did you learn all this stuff? And you're fascinating." I go, "Well, I'm glad you're entertained by me, but
Mm-hmm.
this is just who I am. It's not like I
Mm-hmm.
work at it. In fact, I'd have to work at being normal.
Oh my God. And you said you had like a little bit of psychic abilities. How
I have
old were
a
you
lot of
when
good
you
abilities. Yeah,
how
yeah.
old were you when you realized you had this?
I was very young, and I was imagining and seeing and knowing. Probably
Mm-hmm.
my predominant skill is empathic. I have an
Okay.
empathic nature, so I can feel the energy of a room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's an interesting topic too, because some people think they're empaths, but they're just traumatized. And so they
Oh.
become acutely aware of
Mm-hmm.
the room because they feel like they're in danger.
Right.
But true empaths really do feel the world in a very, very different way. I used to think there was something wrong with me because I felt so much.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was doing is I was feeling like everything around me.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had to get some training on how to manage that, because you can't, like, you don't want to block it. It's a beautiful gift.
Right. Right.
So but you do have to manage it and understand what's yours and what's not yours.
Mm-hmm. You have like a switch that you shut on and off.
Kind of. It's more of a tapping into the question that I will literally ask the divine or my team.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as, is this mine? And I will get a clear answer. Because sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
really do think it's mine. I feel
Right.
sad, and if there's something going on in my life that is making me sad, I'm going to go ahead and project it right onto that.
Right.
But for the most part, I would say that 75% of what I feel is not mine.
Wow. Do
I
you feel
know.
positive energies with me here in this
I
room?
feel awesome with you.
Yay! great.
Felt it the first time. Absolutely. Yeah, listen, if I
Perfect.
didn't feel it, to be honest with you, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
And it's funny
But
because
at the
I
same
feel
time, when we start to attract, going
Mhm.
from that place we started talking about, from who you are not until into who you are, then you're always much more aligned with the truth of who you are. And so your radar works much better. And you don't really attract as much of the people who are not a fit for you. So it's kind of nice. Actually, it's funny that we were talking about how what I was starting to say was that as you alchemize what is not you and you become more and more and more you, because you asked, oh my goodness, do you feel good energy hanging
Mhm.
out with me? Um, there aren't a lot of people that enter my true inner orbit anymore that are not a good fit. If they are, they get kicked out so fast, and I don't
Mhm.
even have to do it. They just I repel them.
Yeah.
They're just like, no, no.
That's
So
how I feel too. Even with having podcast guests, that's why I always have like a first 10 to 15-minute meet and greet because I can just feel the vibes, whether they're going to mesh well with me, if it's going to be like a very candid episode and not just like, oh, tell me what you do. I ask a question, you answer, da 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 da. Like I want it to be like a flowing conversation. So when I
yeah,
have those meet and greets, I genuinely feel the vibe. And I can get the vibe through email, just even like browsing through their website or their work of art, their portfolio before I say, okay, yeah, let's do the episode.
yeah,
So I feel
yeah.
like I am very in tune with my intuition too, and I feel things probably not as to the extent
I
that you do,
don't think
but
it's a
I definitely
contest, but
feel
yeah.
the vibes.
Yeah, but you know what? That is exactly what we're talking about. You do actually speak the same language, right?
Mhm.
And why would we do something and then spend time with people we don't enjoy? That's
Right.
ridiculous.
Right.
No.
And I know you brought up a couple times already this term alchemized freedom. And I know not probably just me, but a lot of other listeners are probably like, what the hell does that mean? If you
Okay.
want to just say what that term is to you, if I'm not, did you create it or it's like a
No.
spiritual, universal term? Okay.
Yeah, so alchemy is a universal
Mm-hmm.
term. And it's based on the Hermetic principles that were written many years ago by an entity, a human called Hermes Trismegistus. And
Mm-hmm.
he actually wrote it. It was rewritten in a book called The Kybalion, and it's the 7 universal principles of this universe. And they're not for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are for everyone. I'm acting like a spiritual snob. They are for everyone, but not everyone understands them
Right.
as deeply as they need to. But the process of alchemy is, have you ever heard the story about turning lead to gold?
Yeah, I read The Alchemist. It's one of my I actually have it on my bookshelf. One of my
Perfect.
jams.
So and right, a perfect explanation in normal terms as to what alchemy means, right? He keeps going in the wrong directions, or so he thinks, and he's
Right.
running into, and he finds the thing, right? Well, the thing is you.
Mhm.
And that is when we again remove the layers. So the terminology that people use now is shadow work. And so
Okay.
shadow work is just all the things we don't love about ourselves and we judge ourselves for and shame ourselves, and then
Mhm.
because we feel that way, we are now attracting other people
Right.
that are showing us who we are. So then we get to go into a process which alchemizes or
Mhm.
transmutes that which is not us into that which is us. And it's like Michelangelo when he did the David, and he said, I didn't carve the David, I just took away everything that wasn't the David.
Right.
So it's exactly like that. So when I talk about it, I'm writing a book about it now. So if
Nice.
yeah, it's a fun project for real. I'm gonna
Mhm.
do an oracle deck. Everybody's all excited, including me.
Nice.
But what I'm talking about when I say freedom is free from the binds of the untruths and limited beliefs that cause us to, for example, not live the life of our dreams because we're
Right.
afraid, not leave a bad marriage, not leave you name it, whatever it is, right? Not lose the weight we want to not exercise like we're supposed to. All
Mhm.
of those things. And then you become very aware of what you need and what your body is telling you it wants. And you follow that guide, you follow that intuition, and it truly does create a life of freedom. It just does. It's almost magical the way it happens. Things start serendipitously coming into your world and
Mhm.
sinking out, and you're like, I was just thinking about you. Oh my God,
Yeah.
what are you doing here? So, and that is a life of joy.
Mhm.
I mean, listen, I'm not trying to sound like that, the spiritual bypasser that says
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
there's no trauma in the world. I'll be the
Right.
first one to talk about all of that stuff, but that's not what this is about.
Right. And
So, yeah, no, go ahead.
when you allow these things into your life, you have to be open-minded to it too, because everyone has this capability to tap into this creative side where they can heal through their past. However, if you're so close-minded, I know a couple of people actually very well who have no desire to even talk, try to understand or be open to these concepts, and they're just self-sabotaging the life that they can live as a better human being. But just to clarify, everyone has this ability to tap into this
Everyone
side.
has it. Everyone
Mhm.
has this. You cannot be on this planet with a soul, and everything has a soul, including the rocks on the ground, and that's a whole
Mhm.
different, podcast. But if you're on the planet, you have this ability to tap into your own divine guidance. Period. End of story. You just do. And if you choose not to, that's also your journey. And so
Mhm.
when you get to a place where you understand this stuff, you actually stop judging others for not doing it. It's just not their cup of tea. Totally
Right.
fine. You're not necessarily in my world as close as you would be because we have a whole
Mhm.
different conversation in my world.
Right.
But yeah, I hear you. And I do have those people in my world that are, either cynical or I
Yeah.
myself can be cynical.
Yeah.
I'm a very grounded woo is what I call
Yeah.
it. you know, we
Yeah.
do live on a planet that has problems. So they do have to be addressed.
Of course, of course. And now I know you also talk about tapping into different realms in this universe, and
Yeah.
I just love the sound of that. So what does that mean?
Well, we are multidimensional beings. We're not just in this body. We're
Mhm.
in many other dimensions and many other um parallel universes. And like now people are starting to talk about time jumping, for example.
Mhm.
So when you make a choice, you're going in a certain direction and you make a new choice. Let's say falling in love, right? You
Mhm.
time jump. You literally change. This is where I was going. And oh my goodness, something just happened. And boom, you're in a new timeline. So you've
Right.
time jumped into a new place, but we do it so automatically that we don't notice it. That's all the parallel choices and universes that we have available to us,
Mhm.
which means let's say a value of mine is abundance, as is freedom. Now, homeless people are free. They don't have to do a thing. So they're
Mhm.
actually free. I mean, they're trapped in a certain life, in my opinion, but
Right.
some of them love what they're doing. So if I want freedom and I don't say also my value is abundance, the universe might give me homelessness.
Right.
So, and I have been homeless. So I don't want to do that ever again.
Mhm.
So that's how we shift into those parallel timelines. It's all happening at once. Einstein talked about it. There's no time, but we need
Mhm.
it to learn. We need the illusion of time so that we
Right.
can learn. This is just a game. We're
Yeah.
in a game.
I am
Let's
always saying that. I am literally always saying time is not real. None of this is real.
no,
We're in a
no.
simulation. That is my go-to for everything.
I have a friend who's always late, and she tries really hard not to do that because she's trying to match up with other people's expectations and
Right.
timelines. And I try never to shame her. Now, I'm never late. I'm always on
Yeah.
time. She goes, why do you never shame me? I said, your the way you do time is different than me. I
Right.
said, I could teach you how not to be late and why you are late, but I'm not going to shame you for it. I might ask you not to do it because if I take an hour out of my time when you ask me to take 15 minutes out of my time
Right.
consistently, now I'm irritated.
Right. Right.
But if you understand there actually is no time, it's like today, you and I were supposed to meet an hour later. I
Mhm.
asked if we could do it, and you're like, yes, absolutely. That was so ease and flow. And
Right.
that's another value of mine. Every morning, please give me ease and flow today.
Yes. Oh, I love
Right?
that. I should start saying that too because I feel there's sometimes I'm so in my routine, like to a minute, to a
Yeah.
second at that point, where if
No.
I'm past a minute, if like, for example, normally I'm like, I have to be ready and downstairs packing lunch for work by 7:30. If it's
Yeah.
7:31, 7:32, I'm panicking. I'm internally panicking because that 1 to 2 minutes going to
Oh,
change the world.
sweetie. That's
But
exactly no.
and I do admire people who don't care about time and they just go with the flow. And there are times where I try to be like that because, like I said, time is not real and the world's not going to end because you're 5 minutes late. But it does get to a point where it's like, for example, if you were to show up 30 minutes late, I would have been pissed, you
Right.
know?
And justifiably so, because, when we take that, that's a universal thing that we know there's no time, except
Right.
that I value you as another soul being on the planet. So if we have an agreement that we're going to do something, I am going to do my very best to honor that
Yeah.
agreement. It's just part of being a human. One of my values is integrity. So
Right.
if I live in integrity, I'm going to do what I say if I can. If I can't, I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you I can't.
Yes.
But
Communication. It all stems to communication
oh
too.
my gosh, right?
Which is a big thing that has I feel like it's a very critical topic that's been coming up a lot. I feel like I keep
Wow,
reverting back to communication and how things can be so much more simple if everyone knew how to communicate properly and directly and instead of beating around the bush like
yeah, or
24/7
oh my gosh, or people pleasing. But
or
again, that's
people
our
pleasing.
trauma. I want you to
Yes.
love me. So I will do everything. I will overgive. I will over this. I will over that. It doesn't work. Nobody
Right.
stays because of that.
Right.
In fact,
Instead, just tell me what it
never has
is and
happened.
how it's
What
going
do
to
you
be.
need? Right.
Mhm.
What do you need? Yeah,
Now
I
the
hear you. We
mhm.
could go on and on about that.
These other realms that you discuss, does it happen during this one lifetime? Like our current lifetime? Or is it like
There is no
similar?
one
There
there is
isn't.
no one
Okay.
lifetime.
Right.
Yes. So yes and no.
Okay.
Because if I were aware of like all of the other realms and all of my other lifetimes and all
Mhm.
of what is going on right now, I think actually many people are in mental institutions because they actually
Mhm.
are aware of things and we're calling them crazy, which is, so politically incorrect. But
Mhm.
we're putting them in places to keep them safe. Like if you look at the young people of today, like the children, they're all anxiety ridden. And
Mhm.
many of them have massive anxiety. It's because they're of the new world. And people my age, I'm 60. So people my age, like we figured it out. We're like, yeah, it's hard as, and we'll be okay. But the kids, they're like, oh my God, they're overwhelmed by all that is
Yeah.
going on. And what I love is I'm meeting a lot of people that don't put them on medications. They give them support and assistance and
Mhm.
help. You don't have to be afraid here. We get it. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's a very hard planet. So if we were aware of all of those realms, we would feel like we're psychotic.
Right.
However, if an idea comes in and it seems odd, but it's this smashing download, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
That can very often be another you in another universe already doing it.
Oh, I love that.
Like, think about, right? So
Yeah.
if you want to be married, have children, be a billionaire, be whatever, if you want to do that, you can actually tap into the you who's actually already made that choice
Hmm.
and can show you how to get there because you already did it. You already know how.
And how do they show me how to get there? Because I need to tap into them
That's
wherever they're
where
at.
that's where we open ourselves, right? And we listen. When you get an idea from your higher self, it for me, it comes in almost like down the back of my right down the back here. And it comes in as an idea, but it has a very different quality.
Okay.
And I can't explain it any better than the whisper people talk about. Like God does not scream.
Mhm.
God whispers
Mhm.
because that energy, universe, God, doesn't matter what we call it,
Mhm.
right? The love that lives in all of us, whatever, choose something, doesn't matter. When that talks, you almost can't hear it. You kind of just feel it. And sometimes I ignore it. I was closing on a house one time and we were going to the FedEx box because it was long distance. And at the last minute, I said to my partner, don't put that in that box.
Mhm.
And she said, why? And I said, you're right. I'm just being silly. Go ahead.
Yeah.
FedEx. How could it go wrong? The package got lost and we almost didn't get the house because of it, because it was
Oh my
like the day
gosh.
before Christmas and the rates were changing and all of the
Mhm.
things. And I thought to myself, holy crap, that was one of those moments where I probably should have
Mhm.
said, can you just trust me? Because my partner at the time was a very grounded person, the one you were just talking about,
Mhm.
which is why we're not partners anymore.
Yeah.
But I stopped myself from my own knowing. Had we chosen a different FedEx box even,
Right.
probably would have been just fine.
Right.
So it's the simplest example that I use for people. I mean, I've got many, many, many of them where I didn't
Yeah.
listen to myself, but that would be one of them.
That's actually so funny. So there was a time, it was a year ago actually, I was in Tulum in Mexico, and I was doing this excursion where we were like exploring like the Mayan civilization. We were in their village. They were cooking for us. We were jumping in the cenotes and all of this, and it was
Oh,
beautiful.
God, it's so
And
cool.
they offered this, it was a crystal, black onyx. And this is like a really small, simple thing, but it came to my mind right away when you gave me that story.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And basically the Mayans, they were going to, I forgot what the correct term, but basically they were going to hammer whatever name, word, anything into this crystal in hieroglyphics. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love that. I already have black onyx crystals. Like this is so fun."
Yeah,
So anyway, so we get to the point where I had to write what I wanted, and I wanted my name because I think my name is semi unique, and I think it's, it's just nice to have on a crystal.
absolutely.
So I gave it to my friend. I had to use the bathroom so bad. So I was like, "Can you please just write my name down on this piece of paper while I go to the bathroom?" And she was like, "Sure." And immediately I had this thought to tell her to put my name in capital letters. And I was just like, "No, it's like she knows my name, like it's fine, right?" So
That
we
right
do
there.
the whole excursion. 6 hours later, we're on the way back to our we were on a cruise. So we were on the way back to the boat,
Yeah.
and they give you the crystal on the way back, and they spelt my name wrong because they mistaken H for an N. And I was like, "Oh my god, and I told my friend, I was like, "I literally had this thought to tell you to write my name in capital letters, and I just completely bypassed the thought." Like, I knew it was gonna and I was just so like, to this day, I still think, like, I had such a strong inclination to tell her to do it in capital letters, and I did not, and they spelt my name wrong,
So
and I didn't take the crystal because I was mad.
I have goosebumps up and down my body. And what I want to tell you is you said it was just a small thing. And that's what we do. We dismiss, right?
Mhm.
That was not a small thing. You knew. And the part that was most important was when it ultimately happened. And then you saw the outcome.
Mhm.
And that is how the divine trains us.
Mhm.
So you asked me, like, how can I tap into that? Meditation is actually the easiest way. And
Okay.
I say easy because, we all go, meditation.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
no,
My
really?
exact thought when you
Tell
said
me
that.
to do that. But there are many forms, right? Moving meditation, walking
Mhm.
in nature. And once we start training that thing that you just shared was your
Mhm.
training ground, and then you just ask, show me, bring me the information to train me to hear my higher self so that we can
Mhm.
co-create and my life can be more ease and flow and joyful
Mhm.
and filled with love and
Mhm.
all the things that I desire. We don't come here to be in suffering. Pain's inevitable. It's part of this planet, but the
Right.
suffering is because we keep patterning. Oh,
Yeah.
that's going to happen again, and now I'm scared, and
Yep.
we bring it in again. And I just told you, I told you, my heart would get broken. I told you I
Right.
shouldn't have. Oh my God. So when we stop doing that, we are alchemizing ourselves into a state of freedom.
Do you so meditate when you bring up meditation, I'm like, I know I'm okay with meditation, but do you recommend just sitting in like silence or I normally do guided meditations because I feel like I'm a lot of
I
times are all over the place.
I was gonna recommend guided because most
Okay.
people, if it gives their ego brain something to pay attention to,
Mhm.
then they can drop in easier.
Right.
It's just a beautiful way for people to be able to drop in because I myself, holy cow. I mean, to listen to me talk, my brain is very active.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's talking to me all the
Mm,
time.
yeah.
So, yeah, and I consider painting meditation. I consider
Mm.
walking in the woods
Mhm.
meditation. I'll turn the music off. I'm a huge music lover. I have music playing all the time, and
Mhm.
sometimes I just need to turn it off and be very, very still. And those are the
Mhm.
moments. Oh, and when you're in water, I get stuff when I'm in the shower.
Stop. So when you were talking about the podcast, like, oh, how my other higher self was thinking about a podcast, that's when I had the idea, was when I was in the shower. I was like, oh,
Shower.
I was
Yeah.
like, I was constantly like for a couple months before that getting compliments about like my voice and speaking.
Oh my
And then
God.
all of a sudden I was in the shower and I was like, I should start a podcast with
Yeah,
an
that's right.
extension of my brand because before it was just blog post and that's literally when I got the idea, and then as soon as I got the shower, I started researching the materials that I was gonna need. How do I even begin? I reached out to a couple of people that I knew who had one already, but that is where I get my, like, genius ideas is in the
Isn't that
shower.
cool? That's so
Mhm.
cool, right?
Yeah.
And I was told why. I guess water is a conduit of frequencies and quantum and
Okay.
energies and all of that. And what I call the divine, some people call the quantum field. It's kind of,
Okay.
man, we could
Mhm.
call it whatever. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Mhm.
So yeah, I love that you shared that. Thank you. It's kind of a thing. It's really weird. And I didn't know it was a thing until I was told, yeah,
I
water's a
didn't know it was a thing until you just said there was a thing. I just thought I was like, "Oh, the shower just might be my I don't know, my safe, serene spot where
Yep.
I'm disconnecting, but I'm actually really connecting, if that makes sense."
You are. And the other thing that comes in too is, by the way, you do have a voice that is very resonant and beautiful, and I can
Thank
hear
you.
the frequency and the energy of your voice is kindness, and that's why
Thank
people
you.
respond to you. Yeah. Um, the car too. If I'm on a car ride, so what are you doing in the car? You actually have to everything you're doing is supposed to be, aside from, this thing we're not supposed to have in our hands,
Right.
is supposed to be focused on what you're doing.
Mhm.
If that's true, then it gives them an in because you're not thinking, you're focused on what you're
Right.
doing. And it gives them an in. And so sometimes things drop in the car too. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, you
Yeah.
know? Um, but yeah, anytime we're not fighting ourselves by thinking too much, which is almost 90% of my day.
Yeah. Now, besides meditation, and for people who are listening and they're like, I hear voices all the time. Like, how do I know that's like my divine highest self? Are there other mindfulness? I know you talked a little bit briefly that you do Oracle too, but are there any other mindfulness tools that you can recommend? Like, do you recommend journaling or like, I
Absolutely.
know I'm a big dream empath. I have a lot of dreams that actually come to fruition. And I know that the universe, my team of light, my highest beings, whatever, they send me messages mostly in symbols of animals
Yep.
that normally resonate with like exactly what's going on. And I try to write them down so I can remember it and like
Yep. Yep.
reinforce the message that they're sending me. But are there any other means or tools that you can recommend, especially for someone who's like really, 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 really beginner?
Yeah. I'm support teams, people like yourself, people like me,
Mhm.
books, teachers, guides, mentors. I'm a huge proponent of support. I've had coaches and support people and teachers and healers like my whole life. Like
Mhm.
I can't even tell you how much I pay. I'd probably be a multimillionaire if I didn't pay all that money out to
Yeah.
receive. There's always going to be somebody who's doing something, ahead of you, not
Right.
better than you, but I'm a huge, and that's not woo woo. That's totally 3D. That's very
Mhm.
concrete, action oriented, and most people can wrap their heads around that. Like, wow, I'd really love to learn to play the piano. Well, you can do it by yourself. You can get a good book. You can go on YouTube nowadays for free,
Mhm.
or you can get a personal trainer. You can get somebody to teach you to play the piano.
Right.
So there's a million ways to do it that are free to extremely expensive.
Mhm.
And I've done both. And it's a part of the repertoire. It's like, spiritual people, and again, I'm probably going to get in big trouble for this, but it's like people are always trying to get out of our bodies. Why?
Mhm.
Our body? Oh my God. It's like an acupuncture needle,
Yeah.
right? It's like a radar. Like it'll tell you everything you need to
Mhm.
know. So somatic teachers and EMDR and tapping, and I'm not familiar with all of these modalities,
Mhm.
but I know that they help people all the time get to a different place. So
Mhm.
I'm constantly learning, whether it be free or paying somebody to help me learn something that I want to do better.
Mhm. I
So
had that struggle where it's like, "Oh, I can probably just learn it on my own." Like, I started a whole website. I did it all from scratch. I started a podcast, did it all on my own, didn't hire anybody to do anything, just did it
I get it.
myself. But I do feel like there's times where I should invest because it's an investment in yourself and eventually it'll pay off no
Well,
matter
I
the price
always
tag.
say, and you can steal this because I always say I am my best investment.
Mhm.
Like I'm a sure thing.
Mhm.
So when I invest in me, I know that I'm investing well. To get to that place, though,
Mhm.
you got to get to that other thing where your self-worth starts to come in and your confidence, and you know your worth.
Right.
So you do things a little differently. And again, it doesn't have to cost anything. It just doesn't.
Mhm.
I've
And you
paid people that it's not been an efficient use of my money and
right.
time.
Yeah.
Right? It's all right. It's part of it.
It's part of the journey.
It's part of the journey. Absolutely. Oh my
And
God.
if you're listening and you are a bookie and you haven't read The Alchemist yet, and we talked about it earlier, and Jean just said books is a way to kind of tap into that
Absolutely.
healing and creative side. If you haven't
Yeah.
read The Alchemist, definitely read it. I remember I read it, I think like 2 years ago, and it took me a minute to get the concept and the principle of it. And I'm 24 now, so I was probably like 22, 21, so I was still kind of young. And after I was reading some articles about it and I was like, "Oh my god, I get it. I get it." And it's a staple book for
It
anybody on
really
this
is.
planet. It's not
Yeah.
just like a willy-nilly frou-frou book. It's a
And it's
staple
it's
for sure.
it's also well written. The another one
Yes.
the book that changed my whole concept of what it meant to be a human was actually Gary Zukav's Seat of the Soul. I read it
Let me
many
write that
years
down.
ago.
I'm gonna write it
Seat
down
of the
right.
Soul. Yeah, and somebody gave it to me and I read it and I thought, "Holy crap." Like
I
it
love that feeling. That's my favorite feeling.
changed everything, and
Mhm.
it sent me. I was your age. I was in my 20s when I read it. And by the way, you're a very old soul. I would not have guessed you to be in your 20s by
Thank
your
you. I was
demeanor.
told I recorded an episode no, a couple weeks ago and with a numerologist and based on my life path, I am an old soul. I was like,
You are.
"Wow,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
awesome."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. And I'm a extremely ancient soul. In fact, I identify as a star seed. I'm not even from this planet. So,
Oh my
that
gosh, I love
that's
that.
again a whole different concept, a whole different
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
there are some of us here who come from other planets to assist.
Mhm.
That's all. That's all. It's just
And
something we
everything
decide
happens
to
for
do.
a reason, and I think our paths aligned and crossed for a
Everything
reason.
serves. Yep.
And like I said before, all of the guests that I have on my podcast, I feel a strong connection or tie to in some way, shape, or form.
Me
And I try to have people who can bring a different POV or light on a topic that I can't dive deep into. So the 30 minutes that we've spent together, I know we touched on a couple of different topics and kind of how you see life and how we can tap into that higher being and to really kind of take our life into our own hands and understanding that we might not have a physical being support team, but we always have the spiritual support team, and understanding that and accepting that and connecting with them in whatever way you see fit. We talked about so many different examples. Shower time. Um,
Yeah.
we also have, I don't know what that bubble that just popped up
It's a
there
little
was.
something. You can do it on FaceTime. A friend of mine did it. She
Oh,
was
did you send
sending me
that?
hearts. Like, well, how did you do that? That's magic.
Oh my gosh.
They must
But
have a setting.
but I think it's so important and amazing when we can do that with ourselves, but also you and I having this conversation and having it. I mean, it resonates with me. I'm 1,000% sure it's going to resonate with listeners. And I just want to thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge and just everything. I think this is a great, great, great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a real pleasure to be here with you. I just enjoy you so much. So I
Oh,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. It was a great start to my Saturday morning, I'll tell you that for
Oh,
sure.
good. Me
Like,
too.
for sure.
And now I have to
But
go drive in the snow, so this was better.
I but before I end the episode, if you wanna just give listeners some of the platforms that they can connect with you on, and
Yeah.
if someone listening and they miss it, everything will be included in the show notes anyway, but just so they can get an audio as well.
Yeah, it would be really hard not to find me. If you Google me, I show up. But I'm on Facebook. I have a private page and a business page an artist and all the things we talked about.
Mhm.
Also an Instagram page. I'm starting a YouTube channel. I myself am thinking about a podcast pretty soon.
Nice.
It's gonna be titled "Artists Behaving Badly."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into all of this kind of thing, but we'll add
Mhm.
a lot more art talk. It like I said, just Google my name. My SEO team, you can't not find me. So
Awesome. Well, that's
appreciate
awesome. Can't wait to
appreciate you
hear the
asking.
podcast.
Me too.
Podcasters supporting podcasters.
Indeed, indeed. I
Yes.
think it'll be fun. Probably a couple
Yes.
months. It'll take me a couple months to get brave enough.
Nice. Well, you got it. Don't let fear stop you from achieving your dreams.
Oh, look who's calling the kettle
Look
black.
at
That's awesome.
literally.
Calling me out on my own. I love it.
No,
Now I've said it
I'm
out loud, so I'm screwed.
I'm literally the same, but I'll hold you to it. So I will be sure to
You.
connect and follow. And if you guys are tuning in and then you don't follow me, I don't know what you're doing, but make sure you follow me at Muse by Mariah _ on Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group where I post all of the episodes too. And I'm on YouTube as well. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you again, Jeanne, for joining. I had
Oh,
so
you're
much fun. I'm so excited for this.
welcome.
And we will tune in next time.